Hello guys, it's Brian again. Today is day 5 of the entire AI LLM challenge. Um, so the first thing is I would like to report some of the results from the Monday trading market period, and I guess for most of these advices, the portfolios are generally, I guess, looking good. So let's start off with the leading portfolio, which is by Gemini. And apparently right now there's around a $19 to $20 profit after the VST trade actually went past. And it's actually pretty interesting. What I found was that when the opening price, of course, for VST during that day was around 164-ish US dollars that day. And at the end of the closing price, it actually risen to around 172 to $173 range, which is a very interesting push by Gemini, and I guess it turned out pretty fine, and it's like a really, really good decision, and that's why it's currently leading. And the next one that I'll have to focus on is, I guess, Claude, which is falling very, very close behind, at around $18 profit, and the decision market the market decision on the previous day was to sell one share of XAR to avoid this entire overbought situation, which actually turns out to be a wrong decision by Claude. Apparently, since XAR was actually like the one that actually grew the most in terms of value yesterday compared to the other choices by Claude, and to be around 3% to be exact. Selling might not be the exact greatest decision, and so yeah, but it's still doing pretty fine with $18 in profit. So, all right, I guess it's still fine in terms of that. And last, we have GPT, which is not really looking that all optimistic. It currently has a $5 profit, which is probably down from $6, if I recall. But in general, it's like the entire holding strategy has not been able to pan out in the short term, especially because GPT chose Apple and Microsoft, which most of the large cap stocks, I guess if they're not like very, very much huge market environment shifts or changes, it's not really going to change much in terms of its value. So I guess we'll see, because for today's plan, as well, GPT is also telling me to hold both Apple and Microsoft. So I guess GPT, instead of saying that it's very conservative, it's more focused on the long term. But since I didn't prompt in to say that it's going to be a 3-month challenge, I guess it just doesn't really input it in that way, and it assumes that I'm going for a very long-term strategy. So I guess it might not pan out with that well compared to the other existing portfolios we already have. But I guess through this wait and see approach for a huge market threshold change or some black swan events, we might see GPT taking some action. As for Gemini, the decision for today is also going to be hold all of the stocks. Very optimistic about the CPI report that has been came out from December that exactly hits on the 2.7% target. There's also another interesting point is that it points out that if JP Morgan presents a consumer report that reflects an optimistic outlook, we might have seen a possible Amazon or Nvidia rally during a Tuesday market. The third one that is pretty interesting is that the Fed independence and criminal investigation by DOJ ended up not really mattering too much except the futures market. Most of the stocks didn't really crash much as expected, so that's definitely a pretty good sign. And let's see how this entire thing goes out. As for Claude, it does acknowledge that the XAR trade was like wrong because it's the fastest growing stock in the portfolio, and we just sold one of them yesterday, and it might keep on growing. It's not overbought, but it's still, I guess, really, really risk averse. Like with around 340 in remaining cash, with a portfolio, apparently Claude is telling me to sort of allocate them to a new sort of like a diversified dividend ETF called SCHD. And what's really interesting about this decision is that the decision was made because there's apparently a Wednesday Supreme Court ruling on tariffs might have a significant change on the economic sentiment. And Claude is betting on the possibility that it's going to trigger a huge chain event, and it's trying to be very, very, very conservative right now to avoid any sort of like a stock market crash or something related to consumer goods. So I guess the XAR trade is just transferred into something more conservative as an asset. So that's it for most of the orders and I guess move changes in market decisions for these three bots. And if you want to keep up to see how these LLMs perform after 90 days, remember to subscribe and also like to keep on following the journey. And we'll see you next time, or in that case, it's going to be tomorrow.